So I'll just begin. My name is Nzile Isoke, and it's my pleasure to welcome each of you to the fifth and final talk in the 2021 GWSS Colloquium Series entitled Black People Healing for Justice and Liberation, Cultivating Fierce Resolve in Times of Political Crisis. We are very fortunate to have today's guest, Amana Brembry Johnson, today. But before I talk about her, I just want to say that we've also had some really quite incredible somatic practitioners, healers, et cetera, who have joined us on this journey over the 2021. They include Pamela Ayo-Yatunde, Joy Lewis, Prentice Hemphill. 2 weeks ago, we had Kara Page. I just want to take a moment to just first acknowledge the generation of time and spirit that have brought each of you to this virtual gathering, as well acknowledge the pent-up grief, anxiety, frustration that so many of us are carrying right now as a result of the severe disruption and manifold tragedies that have unfolded across the world as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are all, I believe, in our own ways, suffering and enduring, while at the same time finding new ways to build and live in relationship with each other. This series challenges us to do this, exactly this, but to also find joy and peace in the doing. This series has offered us resources to heal from the trauma of racism, white supremacy, homo and transphobia, nationalisms, self-righteousness, ego, and greed. Welcome to the Department of Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies. This is what we do. I just want to say a little bit about this, this final series that we've had, or this final session in the series. I mean, we've been talking about over the past year, Black feminist and Black queer practices and healing modalities to care for the mind, body, and spirit. We have talked about how Black feminist and queer people have created mindfulness practices to resist anti-Blackness in interpersonal, professional, and academic life. And we've also explored what these practices can teach us as we strive to bring peace and justice to our own bodies and communities. We've discussed how community somatics can restore resilience and resolve in a culture of denial, fear, ambition, greed, and willful ignorance. And finally, we've learned how to begin to connect the wisdom of Black feminist and queer ancestors to knowledge-making practices in community and in academic spaces. This series has been made possible by many, many sponsors, both across the University of Minnesota and in other places, including the Hamra Center for Health and Wellness BIPOC Initiative at Macalester College. There are certain departments that I particularly want to acknowledge for their support over this year. They include the Race, Indigeneity, Gender, and Sexuality Initiative, the Departments of American Studies, African American and African Studies, Chicano and Latino Studies, the Black Faculty and Staff Association, the UMN Gender and Sexuality Center for Queer and Trans Life, the UMN Office of Public Engagement, and the UMN Office of Equity and Diversity. It has also been made possible by tireless and enthusiastic efforts of our GWSS administrative team, including Casey Kinney, Liz Johnson, and Carrie Pedersen. So let me now to get to the point of why we are gathered here. We are here to return to the sacred medicine of darkness. And Amana Brembry Johnson will be our guide. Amana Brembry Johnson is a core teacher at the East Bay Meditation Center in Oakland, California, and one of 4 co-creators and guiding teachers of EMBC's spiritual teacher, and leadership training program. As a mentor, Amana guides trainees from all over the world through mindfulness meditation, through the Mindfulness Meditation Training Certificate Program designed and developed by Tara Brock and Jack Cornfield. 6 decades of contemplative and ceremonial practices that thread through the Christian, Baptist, Buddhist, West African, Caribbean, Indigenous, and American, and other spiritual teachers informs her interdisciplinary approach in her teaching methodologies and healing modalities. Amana's work emerges through intersections of spirituality, social justice, somatic practices, intuitive creativity, and collaboration. As an accomplished visual artist, Amana creates imagery that exposes emotional and spiritual barriers of the heart as portals into kindness, compassion, self-love, and intentional action. I also want to say, and this is kind of off the official biography, that Amana Brembry Johnson is a master teacher, a wise woman healer who works within and through the lineage of the Black feminist womanist tradition, including Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Zora Neale Hurston, Audre Lorde, and Bell Hooks. And when I say that she's a healer, what I'm saying is that her words break through the barriers of identity, through the layers of skin and trauma and resistance and hardness that this culture creates, and go straight to the heart. This is what I've experienced from Amana in some very complex and difficult kinds of spaces. So I want to invite each of you to unmute your cameras and give your visual and audible welcome to our distinguished guest, Mama Amana Brembry Johnson. Give her some love. I want to hear it too.
Hey,
Hey, Amana.
I miss you.
Welcome.
I love you.
Hey, hi, welcome.
Hello, Amana.
Hey, Amana.
Glad to have you here.
Oh, wow.
Happy. Miss you. Love you. So excited.
Looking around, I see we're gonna do some good work today because I see who's up in this place. I see who's up in here, and I know we're about to do some important work today. Oh my gosh, I'm just waiting to listen. Amana, I'm turning it over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Zenzile. My heart is pounding. I was pretty calm. I've never had this kind of reception before. Thank you so much. I feel so welcomed and seen. And Zenzile, thank you for that beautiful introduction. Now the pressure is on to fulfill all of the accolades that you laid upon me. Thank you so much. I just want to start by offering a really warm thank you to you, Zenzile, for graciously inviting me to speak here and reflect and share my reflections with everyone today. I also want to thank Casey Kinney for assisting me through the process of administration and technical preparation, as well as Liz Johnson and Carrie Peterson for their contributions in making the GWSS Colloquium possible, and for me to be here with you today. Let me just offer these words by Joy Harjo, which strikes at the topic that I'll bring today. Welcome your spirit back from its wandering. It may return in pieces, in tatters. Gather them together. They will be happy to be found after being lost for so long. That's from Joy Harjo's book, Calling the Spirit Back from Wandering the Earth in Its Human Feet. So, really bringing myself and those whose shoulders I stand upon into the room. I'm Amana Brembry Johnson, daughter of Bobby Lee Johnson and Warren Nathaniel Johnson. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. And I presently sit on the stolen land that was once stewarded and traveled by a really rich, complex network of indigenous peoples. And they include the Pit River tribe, the Hupa, Klamath, Karuk, Winnemem Wintu, Norrel Mook Wintu, Toyan Wintu, Sunu Unwe, and the Shasta. And I ask forgiveness for any tribes that I do not. Somehow I got muted real quick. I acknowledge the land of this region, which has for millennium received the ceremonies and prayers of many tribes, who, in much smaller numbers now, continue to pour prayers onto the land in ceremony, in counsel, and in deep connection to the earth and ancestors. I'd like to open the chat for everyone to really be able to enter into your box your location and the name of the ancestral lineage of the land that you occupy. And if you choose to also enter the name of an ancestor that you'd like to sit beside you for a time together. Let me see the chat. The Dakota. Oh, and I'd so much love to see your faces. Anyone who can possibly open up their video. Yes, my mother Dolores. So important to know and acknowledge the land that we're on and to remember the history of genocide and brutality that made the people who resided on the lands that we live on move, relocate, lose their sense of place. And for those of you who may not know the legacy of the land that you live on, I invite you to do that research. Because it's our story. It's all of our story. We've all been relocated in some kind of way, lost our sense of place. Dakota, my mother Sue, the land of the Dakota peoples, Ojibwe, Shina, my aunt Elaine sit next to me, Ni Sota Makoche, forgive me if I've mispronounced that. I would like to sit with my abuela Rose, my mother Virginia, the land of Chochenyo and Karkan, and the Karkan people. I'm in Minnesota, the land of the Anishinaabe, Lakota, sitting with Mama KK today, my mother Lois. Thank you, thank you. Thank you all for calling in the ancestors and for acknowledging this land. So my prayer to the ancestors, may the grace of those who have gone before come and sit beside us in our homes and workplaces and radiate their protection and prayers outward across this virtual gathering into the surrounding air and the edges of space that our bodies occupy. We offer gratitude to those who prayed their dreams into the earth, that we, their prodigy, may embody their wildest dreams of freedom and liberation. May it be so. Ashe. Aho. And amen. So, I live in Weed, California. I'm about 10 miles from Mount Shasta and an hour from the Oregon border. I was drawn to this area by some unseen force, some song, some whispering. Perhaps the energetic pull of the mountain itself, or the spirit energy that I can feel rising up from this place of beauty, this incredible place of power, this vortex of energy. Something drew me here, and it happened in a flash. I came. 6 months later, I had moved after living in my home of 20 years in Ohlone land in Oakland, unceded Lisan Ohlone. And shortly after arriving here, after packing up my so precious possessions and undertaking the onerous move from Oakland, accompanying my arrival was just a cascade of unexpected and seemingly never-ending difficulties. And this all happened still in the heated midst of what my good friend Conda Mason calls the two pandemics. The newer pandemic of the coronavirus, and the centuries-old but intensified and more openly exposed pandemic of white supremacy. In the midst of all that, I found myself even positioned even further into the mouth of uncertainty. Of course, the questions, why, and an hour away is Ashland, Oregon, which used to be a sundown town, as many of the other towns in this area. So, I am in this place of serious power, incredible violence and brutality that moved the Native people out, and also the remnants, the strong remnants of racism and white supremacy. So there is something more than the incredible beauty around me that drew me here. Perhaps it could have been for me to experience firsthand the meaning of impermanence, which presented itself in such a visceral way, as I've already lived through an evacuation from the fire that spread into the lava caves of the mountain. And it sent up simmering smoke for months. At one point, I was wondering if the volcano was waking. Or, it could have been for me to attune to a deeper understanding of my personal connection to the struggles of Indigenous people here and across the land. There's something about knowing history intellectually, and another thing altogether about knowing it as a felt sense in the body. The energy of colonization and genocide and the loss of sacred ground through forced relocation are still spoken in the language of the trees here. It wasn't long after I arrived that I found out that the Winnemem Wintu people, whose name means the middle water people, have been and are still engaged in a long and arduous battle with the Crystal Geyser bottling company. Think juice squeeze, sparkling water, Tahava tea, right here. A company who continues to colonize the land here, to dishonor the native people and desecrate the earth. A company that does not recognize that indigenous knowledge honors that water is a living element, alive, conscious, intelligent, just like the earth. And really, in capturing it, treating it with chemicals, bottling it in plastic, and selling it, is to steal, to imprison, and to traffic it for profit. So it was a victory. A partial battle was won by the Wintu people who fought really hard to prevent the company from owning Mount Shasta's water rights. I mean, owning it. But apparently the 8-year litigation and fierce community support finally discouraged the company from not activating the water plant. What I can say is that the First Nation people have not forgotten that all about us, the seen, the unseen, the animate, and the inanimate, are filled with life, that there are relatives, that the elements in nature have a different way of communicating and passing on wisdom to those who can listen and see without eyes and hear without ears. In so many ways, our global illness is that we have forgotten our true language, our universal language that speaks to our interconnectedness to everything, to the sacredness of our being. You know, my mom, she had so many, she could pull out all these sayings, and she'd make stuff up, But one of the things, she always reminded us is out of sight, out of mind. Our attention to care for the invisible connection between all that there is has over time vanished as a priority. We've lost contact with essential elements of life that are invisible, intangible, and grossly disregarded by a culture that places value only on what can be empirically proven and scientifically studied.
Very concerned about this, and I don't think they like the idea of their ballots.
Hi.
Has had some issues in the trust
I
department.
just want to invite everyone who can hear me to kindly mute your microphone.
I think I muted everyone. So, we live in a culture that's dominated by Western time, white supremacy, patriarchal and misogynistic thinking, a culture that is deathly afraid of the dark and the unknown, and that perpetuates that fear in every expression of itself that we don't get to escape either. We forget that darkness lives within us and is the reservoir of creative emergence, something we so desperately need right now. We've come to think of the dark unknown, the unknowable mystery of this life as something sinister, foreboding, something we need to protect ourselves from, even to squash or to kill, in order to let the glorious light in, to dispel the darkness. Many of us experience the darkness as the terrible muse that stirs our vision of monsters and poisonous tentacles, of things that drag us down into the depths of hell. These are the mythologies of our culture, deeply embedded in our psyche, the archetypes that have transfused our veins. So we tend to look to a future of more light. Forget the present moment. It is the darkness of tomorrow, of the next unknowable moment, that we have to be armored for. Well, the truth is that we are blinded by the light. Blinded not to notice that when the light is apparent, the stars of the universe are cloaked. That is only through the veil of darkness that the depths of the cosmos are revealed. The truth is that we are blinded to the essential necessity of darkness, to its own luminosity, to its capacity to absorb, to exude, to engulf and embrace, to hold the heat necessary to incubate and foment new creations, to transform and mutate into something never before seen or thought of. All this emerges out of the darkness. And this is what we so desperately need right now. We need the emergence of a new system of everything, a new system of governance, a new way of being with each other, new economics of sharing and generosity, of education that is not geared towards cultivating brilliance only to be poached by companies that do not have our best interest at heart. We need a new understanding of self-care and appreciation of the diverse shapes and needs of our bodies. We need a return to the old ways, where elders are honored as the precious holders of knowledge and not used up, just vessels to be tossed away to die. This is the culture we live in. Oh my God. Did I say that? I got chills. We need a new way of acknowledging life, the sustaining gifts of the feminine, a new way that makes communities places of holding and refuge, a new way of communicating with each other with love. And part of the way to download, channel, download, not think it through, conceptualize it through, intellectualize it through, but download these new systems is to listen. That's why I wanted to play that piece, to listen deeply to what is speaking to us from within, not to look outward, to reform and recycle the broken systems that we already know do not work and are rotten at the core, at the foundation. No small task. Because embedded in our very language is a conditioning to look to the skies as the place of eternal peace, of heaven, of celestial bliss, as the direction that the light comes from, the light that's going to dispel all the dark, deep, unknown secrets, as though there were some kind of battle between the two. You know, to aspire is to ascend, and to fail is to fall back to earth. This is our mythology. Our language itself is a war zone. It shapes and molds our view of the world, and that view shapes and molds our thoughts. And thoughts are powerful as hell. Those thoughts shape and inform our actions. And then they reinforce our explicit and implicit biases. When we speak in the tongue of white supremacy, patriarchy, misogyny, fear of difference, and in the tongue of racism, it continues to cut off our sense of self-worth. It silences our voice and steers us away from connecting with the fertile and luminous darkness of our being. Our very speech continually perpetuates our own oppression and contributes to the loss of our sense of belonging and connection to our inner goodness. And most of all, to our personal power, because we are powerful beings. This is the illness of spiritual memory loss. In our institutions of learning, we are caught in a cyclical web of conformity, of lifting up literacy, conceptual thinking, and science as the blaring lights that lord over that which is felt within and that which communicates without words. Accepting this and living in this way is to live without faith that we belong here, that our truth resides within us, that we are a part of both the dark and the light. You know, I'm not bad rapping light, okay? Let me be clear about that. We need the light too, but it's imbalanced. It's really messed up, totally imbalanced. Living in this way is to disregard our lives in the present moment and to live with the fear. The fear is, projecting into the future that there is not enough, that there will never be enough, that we are not enough, and that we can't survive unless we shine some light on the darkness and the unknown. This moment, this presence right here is all that is certain. We can choose to live right here and to exercise inquiry and curiosity about the nuances and distinctions and gradations of this ever expanding and continuous moment happening right now with presence and attention. Or we can continue our inclination to project fabrications into the darkness, because the next moment is dark. The next moment is the unknown. The next moment is what's uncertain. So we can continue to incline and project fear and worry into the darkness and wrestle it down and cut it open and try to kill the uncertainty of it by filling it with future desires. This fear of darkness is deathly. More and more Black bodies are being murdered and killed in broad daylight in the streets. We had a big upsurge of publicity and everything that happened. It's still happening. More and more Black women are being brutalized and killed, not just by the police, but by family and community members as well. This year alone, you're not going to believe this if you don't know the statistic. This year alone, from January to September, the count of Black femicide is more than 1,000 lost lives. You know what that amounts to? That's 4 Black women a day. A day. Whose lives are deemed so worthless that we rarely hear their stories. I haven't heard the stories. But I did hear the story about this child that, got, couldn't be found and hiking and living in the, anyway, I won't go into that. But I correlate that fear of darkness, fear of Blackness, fear of what dark-skinned people represent. Could these acts be driven by a deeply internalized fear of the potentiality of the unknown represented by darkness, by Black skin? Could these killings of Black bodies be driven by the threat of what may emerge from this darkness, from this dark body? From the need to kill the seed of emergence, to kill the fertile mystery, to snuff out any ambiguity that frightens in its refusal to be categorized, to be predicted and contained. And let me just say, that statistic I gave you, I didn't delve deeply into it. I don't even know if it includes the femicide of trans women. If we layer that on top of that, we got more women being killed daily. And yeah, I know there are definitely motivations that are driven by hate. But what is the hate about? I'm gonna stick with this fear of emergence. This fear of the potential, the possibility of something emerges that shakes up the way things are. I can still remember the cadence of the tiki torch bearing white nationalists in Charlottesville, chanting, "Jews will not replace us. Jews will not replace us." I mean, this is a fear of an emergence that might possibly destabilize what has become normalized and comfortable and privileged. Our lives, by and large, have been mostly whittled down to inhabit a 4-walled cell of varying sizes. Some big, some little, some cardboard, and fashioned with an array of conveniences and luxuries to the extent that we can afford. We spend our time, this is really key, we spend our time noticing objects, yeah? Look around you. You notice the objects around you. But we pay little or no attention to the space around them. The gap where unspoken wisdom lies, to the expanse where there is a knowing that cannot be measured, that is intangible, that is intuitive, that is deeply felt and known within the body. Unnameable, non-cognizable. You have to know. And then you have to have the confidence to know that you know. By and large, generally, we are numb and unacknowledging to this wisdom. We don't even pay it any attention hardly. And yet, we do know that there is phenomena that exist. If we doubt that there is some intangible, downloadable, internal knowledge that can be measured by scientific instruments, we do know that there is phenomena that exist in the universe, in our world, all around us, that is unseen and intangible. Elements that have been there all along and that go unacknowledged and or denied until the devices of men have been fashioned that will validate their experience and bring them into the empirical realm where they can be measured and compartmentalized and categorized and all of that. Only then are they acknowledged and made believable and credible. So, example, let me turn your attention to air. I want to bring to your mind the element of air. If ever in doubt about the essential nature and importance of that which cannot be seen, okay, simply bring to mind this invisible element that exists all around us and occupies the space-time that connects all things. The element of air contains the breath of life. It's integral to our existence. Its presence of absence. Its presence of absence. You got that? Its presence of absence is a testament that essential truths abound in the unseen. Air, it is the absolute protector of the earth. It's the blanket that forms the earth's atmosphere. Air creates the pressure that allows water to exist on the earth's surface. It absorbs radiation from the sun to warm the surface of the planet. And it basically protects us from burning to a crisp. Air is an unseen element, essential element that is both within us and pervades the space around us. It houses the oxygen that we breathe. And yet the breath goes largely unnoticed. You're not paying attention to the breath. Being deprived of air for just a few minutes, boom, it's over. Just a few minutes. Essential, invisible, intelligent, filled with wisdom. A known element that cannot be touched, smelled, seen, heard, tasted, felt. Yet it's essential to our lives. And if you're thinking, oh, I can smell, no, you're smelling something that the air has carried to you. The flour, the cooking, you feel it, you feel the wind blowing in the air, right? But air, you don't do none of that with that. So, what does this say about our conditioned priorities of focus and importance? So, okay. I just want to take a moment and ask you to close your eyes Take a few deep breaths and reflect on your attention to air. How aware of air have you been throughout this talk? This breath that is going in and out of your body. Really just bring your awareness to that for a moment. There is wisdom in settling in to listen deeply. Can you feel into the depth of connection and intimacy that exists between yourself and other beings that's being bridged by the breath that circulates in the air around you? We're not separate. All of this are our relations. How aware of you are in, how aware are you in any moment of the intimacy of connection that we have with each other through the process of respiration? We are nature. And have you ever noticed that there are no straight lines in nature? That everything and every aspect of nature holds a magical, yes, magical, emergent surprise. That's us. Hello. And it includes incredible beauty and terrible devastation. It's not all, roses. That's us. Hello. And for nature, let me see. Oh, I'm going to have to pull this up. And for nature, emergence is the order of the day. And what we look upon as mutation, as queerness, and oddities that deviate from the so-called norm is simply nature deviating from the expected to create a new expression of itself. Nature deviating from the expected to create a new expression of itself. Okay, I got this pulled up. So, this is a white man. He's an artist. I love his work. Andy Goldsworthy. We often forget that we are nature. Nature is not something separate from us. So when we say that we have lost our connection to nature, we've lost our connection to ourselves. And if you don't know Andy Goldsworthy, I invite you to check him out. He is an environmental artist who creates ephemeral artworks, absolutely gorgeous, out of whatever nature has to offer. And he creates it in the snow, in the ice, in the fall leaves, floats it down the river, hangs it, and then it goes back to its source. It's not something you can bring home and put in your home. So, I hope I have time to, whatever, to share it all. So we're not static, solid entities that we tend to think of ourselves as. Each and every one of us is a process, just as is nature. And if there are no straight lines in nature, this means to me that it is not our nature as human beings to conform to the fabricated straight lines that lead us away from ourselves. If it is true that we are nature, and it is, then that means we are emergent beings imbued with an immense capacity to create what has never been created before. Again, to reform, not reform something that's already there, but to reform, to remember, and to make magic. Yes, there. Okay, let me try to mute. Okay. Oh, to make magic. That thing that cannot be measured and cannot be cognized. And that's so easily denied. So, there's so many of us, not all, I'm not globalizing, but there's so many of us that have massively accepted the notion that a good life is having a good job. I'm just talking about some of our conditioning, okay? Taking pride in work that contributes towards increasing the world's knowledge base of proven facts, or working towards increasing the profits of businesses that do not serve the communities in which we live. We all have to make a living, but these are our options. Happiness in our culture is measured by how far you can climb the ladder of success, gain the highest paying job, and acquire all the commodities and products that only momentarily feed our particular taste. In the meantime, the vast majority of the workforce is unconsciously working towards our own demise by contributing to the destruction of the very living body that sustains us. Like the employees who work for Crystal Geyser Bottling, or Chevron, or Walmart, or IKEA, or Cargill, who's financing the pipeline in Dakota. These are major polluters, deforesters, and toxic waste producers that are contaminating our world and thus destroying life as we know it. I'm not hating on our workers. This is the stew that we're in. This is the matrix. My favorite, the matrix. So I want to share these words from Tyson Yunka Porta of the Apalak clan in Melbourne, Australia. He's the author of a book that came out last year called Sand Talk. We used to have family and community. Now we have economy and government, the state. And they provide what land used to provide. But we have to sell a third of our lives, and the other third sleeping. And a sizable chunk of what is left, commuting, life maintenance tasks, paying bills, no exercise. And we get provided with little spaces as long as we continue to do all these pointless tasks over and over and over and over and over again until we die. If that's not slavery, I don't know what is. It's normalized. And I remember, I think it was Rashawn Roland Kirk. What did he play? I remember his cheeks got big. Maybe it was trumpet, I don't remember. But he had this song, "Oh, volunteer slavery, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh, volunteer slavery." So yeah, volunteer slavery. So we're living in a time that begs us to remember, to reconstruct the parts of ourselves, because the world is in desperate need of the magic. The magic, I'm going to say it over and over again, the magic that we're capable of bringing forth. You know, the obstacles to this recovery of memory, to the retrieval of the things that we've forgotten, are so layered and convoluted, so filled with half-truths and fabrications and post-truths. And as we undertake this journey, I hate to say it, but in many ways, we must die. We must let die the notions we have been spoon-fed about happiness, impermanence, stability, brilliance, intellect, and about the things that bring us joy. That's a hard pill to swallow because I know I love some of my stuff. But yeah, decolonizing is a deep excavation through layers and layers and layers of ancient, crusted over, hardened striations of coverings. Internally, we must regurgitate and purge so many ideas inherited, swallowed whole, and passed down through the generations. Ideas and notions that have now become the fabric of our lives, invisible like the air that we breathe. So let me see now. You know, I wanted to break us out, but maybe I'll just throw some questions out here just to give you an opportunity to reflect upon them. So, in what ways do you contribute to the systems that are destroying our world? I'll let you sit with that a minute. You know, it's always better when you talk it out loud, because then, you bring it all the way up to the surface and you can't hide it from yourself. But I don't think we have time for breakout. So yeah, in what ways do you contribute to the systems that are destroying our world? Let me give you a moment to just sit with that, and if you have a pen or something, you can jot down just some ideas or thoughts or reflections about that. It's an important question. One that's easily hidden from ourselves. Because a lot of times, we're happy to get these jobs that we get, because we have to, pay the bills and, keep shelter and feed the kids and sometimes we don't want to look deeper and find out the harm that's being done by the place that we're working for and contributing to that. Or just the way we may desecrate the earth in our own ways, or not acknowledge, Concrete jungle, yeah. So we live in these concrete jungles. Sometimes we don't have access to nature. And the next question I want to leave you with is, what ancient traditions of your own culture or family legacy have you given up or forgotten about to live a life of certainty, so-called certainty, because nothing is certain. But what ancient traditions of your own culture or family legacy have you given up or forgotten about to live a life of certainty? You know, let me put these in there. Ooh. I'm sorry. My computer's not plugged in.
And I can type them and put them in the chat if you like.
Okay, you got them?
Yep.
Oh, great. I'm just gonna try to get my computer plugged in before it like cuts out on me. Yeah. Whew. Well, there's no shame. Whatever you feel and come up with, there's no shame, there's no blame, there's no judgment. Because culturally and intellectually and systemically, from the cradle to the grave, and even before we were born, our parents and our parents' parents and their experiences, we've been trained to turn our minds and hearts away from the unseen. Not only have we been trained, but we've been terrorized to do it. Look at all the witch burnings. Look at all the knowledge, the connections to the earth and to nature, the medicine, the ancient knowledge passed down verbally from generation to generation to generation that had to be hidden or death. So no shame, no blame, but it's so important for us to be able to be honest with ourselves when we answer those questions. Because only awareness is going to give us agency. So from the cradle to the grave, our hearts and minds have been turned away from the unseen, from the intuitive. You know, we all know about the intuitive, away from the confidence of knowing what we know without external validation, away from the things that are intangible and indescribable, the things that have no words. And by being turned away from that, we have left out a vast and powerful part of the human experience, because of an accepted belief or an internalized belief that if it cannot be experienced through the sense doors of the eyes, nose, ears, mouth, skin, or scientifically proven, then it does not exist. So, you know, lastly, I just want to talk a little bit about the medicine to this illness. And this crosses all cultures, religions, traditions, through the practices of just sitting still and being in silence, reconnecting with nature, reclaiming our time to rest, retreating from the hamster wheel of continual multitasking. Multitasking is a death sentence, okay? It's a death sentence to our lives and to our minds. Look at all the Alzheimer's, you know. I remember some of the old folks when I was growing up, they said, oh, so-and-so is senile, but it was not as rampant as it is now. retreating from the distractions of mass technological use. That addiction. Ew. Yuck. And probably all y'all in there are looking at me through this screen have that addiction because you got the tools right in front of you, okay? I bet, most of us, as soon as we get off, we gonna open up that phone and, the technological addiction, which is just a distraction, a well-placed distraction because, they used to have the TV in your house, programming you. Now we are all cyborgs. We're attached to our devices. We can carry them with us up in the woods. They cut us off from ourselves and each other. The medicine to relinquish our habits of all of these addictions, all that are offered through all sorts of media. And not to mention substance and sensual addictions. Sensual meaning not just sex, but eating. Really all these things I described are activating our senses in some way. Our technology is activating our tactile sense as well as our visual sense. By turning away from these interruptions to our own hearts, we begin to create a space to remember how to listen to the wisdom of the trees, to tune into the invisible frequencies in the space around us, and to communicate more effectively without words. We all have these capacities. So I'm going to close up by saying that the truth that hides in the dark depths of our knowing is that we are powerful beyond measure. These distractions maybe are set in place to keep us from realizing that. We are a part of and belong to this earth and to each other. We are an inescapable web of connection and inner being, and capable of profound innovation. I'm going to read one thing because I've gone on. This is Mark Gonzalez, a little chapbook called In Times of Terror, Wage Beauty. And he says, even the way we define words do not serve dignity to the beauty they are attempting to hold. When did the definition of belonging become imprisoned to ideas of citizenship? When did our definition of wealth become limited to the realm of finance versus what a person or a people value? Yet, what is most stagnant is our inability to create. It is as if we have forgotten that one does not shift a narrative by reacting to it. One shifts by authoring a new narrative so brilliant it makes the existing one look painfully unimaginative and obviously bigoted. Mark Gonzalez. And with that, I guess I open up for questions or reflections. I'd love to hear reflections. I'm not no expert on anything. So, Zinzile,
Yeah.
how do we do this?
So what I want to encourage y'all to first is just to give some love to Amana Brembry Johnson, artist, teacher, wise woman, meditation master. I don't know. We have to give it up. Please, I would just invite you to unmute your cameras and be sad and to give back a little bit of the humanity that she has shared with us. And when I mean humanity, I mean that deep, dark humanity that often just doesn't get to be expressed. And second, I want to kind of encourage folks to put the questions. You can put them in the chat or you can raise your hand. There's a reaction button so that you can make sure I see you and raise your hand. I want you to say your name and say it loud and proud because you are here. And because we know the next moment is not guaranteed. So say your name and offer your reflection and just keep, hopefully whatever you offer, just keep it limited to about no more than like 1 or 2 minutes so that we can give as many people the opportunity to be seen and heard in this space as possible. All right, so if you can use we got one already. So Paula is showing us how to do it. She put the reaction button in there. And if you put that little hand up, then it will go right to the top left of the screen and we can see you. So Paula, I want to invite you to go ahead and give your offering to us.
Thank you so much for the medicine. You asked a question about midway. You said, when did we pay attention to the breath? And I was reminded that in the first few moments of you helped us pay attention to the breath because you took the time. There was just a few breaths of silence and breathing. And I thought, oh yeah, this is how this should start. So thank you for that. I feel full from what you have served today. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Lydia. Good to see you.
If you all choose silence, I will go ahead and act like a facilitator and say, I'm really curious to hear your reactions or responses to some of these tough questions that Amana posed to us. What are the ways that we contribute to destroying the systems of our world? And maybe if we can say that, we can kind of like become conscious of it in ourselves. Anise, welcome. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a very long time. Go ahead and speak.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you very much today. It was really good. I find myself at the crossroads with trying to be on the right side, you know, representing our cultural centers and our students, our underrepresented students here, and then also working with the administration to move things. And sometimes it's like, it's difficult because it can be difficult because things get politicized and that kind of thing. And so I know that I participate sometimes by I know I uphold the system of oppression at times and I feel conflicted about it. And I work hard not to do that. And in the long run, you know, I'm trying to get to something that's good for students, but getting there, sometimes I feel like I am compromising. And so I know that I uphold this system and it's really hard. So I lean into some of my colleagues and I ask questions and try and get input on how can we move them where they're going to take, the university is going to take them there anyway. But how can I do it so that it's not harmful to them? So, and I really I lose sleep over this.
So totally understandable. And, you know, it's beautiful, the awareness, you know, that you have around the impact that, you know, your work or your actions, the setting that you live in may be creating. It's not helpful to shoot another arrow. It's, you know, it's a moment to honor yourself, to honor your awareness of the quagmire that you're in. and just to continue to move forward. You know, we're stuck in this matrix, and to really be sweet to yourself in the work that you're doing, even though it has all these contradictions, to take the time to rest. Because when we make the intention, I'm going to tell you, I meant it when I said how powerful we are. When we make the intention to create something different, we can call that in. We just have to be able to really sit with our internal knowing, and it might not come right away. And the beautiful thing is that you have colleagues that you're sitting with, that you're processing this with. So thank you for your share. Thank you.
Thank you, Anise. And for all of us who are in the state of Minnesota, and particularly at the University of Minnesota, we are in that matrix and we live in that contradiction. We are in a dirty, muddy, well, I don't even want to call it dirty. We're in a dry, sandy stew. I don't know. Because the mud is where we get our fertility from. It's where we get the soil. It's dry and crispy. Anyway. I want to open it up. This is the real work. Thank you, Anise, for that heart question. Lydia, I see you.
Let me get situated here. First and foremost, dearest Amana, I miss you so. So grateful for your wisdom and radiance and how you share it. Beyond, the words can't even capture it. And we'll have to sit offline and I'll fill you in on the full gratitude. But you know, I had to join late due to some situation with caring for my mom. But in the moments that I've been here, the profundity of what you're sharing is beyond sustenance and nurture. To answer the question, in what ways do you contribute to the systems that are destroying the world? You know, I need to sit with that more, but what's rising to the top for me right now is by not being adamant about carving out this exact moment that I'm carving out right now. Because I know personally throughout my entire life, from the time I was a child, when I sit still, I'm well. And the shape of my life right now is not such that it's as easy as it used to be. So, you know, recognizing that that's a form of contributing to the suffering in the world, because then I'm not able to bring my best self forward. So that's one of my reflections at this moment that rose to the top immediately. So thank you for offering the thought, and so incredibly wonderful to be here and to see you and to revel in your radiance. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. You know, I'm so happy that you emphasized that, because so much we think that, you know, we have to go out in the world and we have to do something, do, not realizing that our internal resilience and strength is part of not contributing to the rat race that we're in. Taking care of ourselves makes us available to ourselves first, and then to those we love. And that modeling radiates out into our environment, to our families, to our children, to those who are around us, and allows them to see, to absorb by example what's important. So thank you for bringing that to light, Lydia.
Any other reflections? One of the questions that you asked as well, for us to think about is what have we kind of forgotten? What ancient traditions have we either given up on or forgotten about in order for us to live a life of certainty? I felt like that was a really tough question. A really tough question. Or what have we never known? And it really requires that we all do some deep digging or some deep diving under the waters of our histories. So getting away from the lanes and the occupations of our histories and maybe kind of getting under there and exploring the different relationalities and knowing these stories in new ways of our history. So that was a really important question, and for me. And I think one of the ones that, particularly during COVID, that was tough is like really just sitting with my, my people and my girlfriends, the folks who I need to be close and tight with, not having the time to be with them physically really created a big, it created a lot of isolation, and in that isolation, other things can come in which aren't quite so healthy. So that was one of the things that came up for me. What were some of the things that came up for others that you might be willing to share? Thank you, Sadada.
Thank you, Siddhartha. Yeah. Or any reflections that you may have, or any questions that you may have also. And thank everyone for all of your kind comments in the chat. I'm so grateful and so appreciative, and I feel so held by this community here. Thank you.
Amana, you mentioned two books during your talk, Sand Talk. I can't remember the name of the author, and you also recommended Mark Gonzalez's In Time of Terror, Make Beauty.
Wage Beauty.
Wage Beauty, that's right, Wage Beauty, excuse me. What else should we be reading, and what else should we be contemplating on?
Well, okay, I'll put in Tyson Yunkaport's, how you spell his name. Tyson Yunkaport. Yeah. There's so many really great books coming from so many different angles, but I would also recommend Sebene Selassie's book, You Belong. And let me see here, I'll try to put in. Selassie,
Selassie. I think that's it. Sebanon.
Okay.
Sabine. Richa is here. Richa, did you have any final words? Or Richa's our director of graduate studies, and I mean, there's a few remarkably incredible people here, but Richa's one of them. Richa, did you have any last words, reflections for Amana?
Just deep gratitude. Deep gratitude, Amana. I'm just absorbing every word, every piece of wisdom that you have shared with us. I was thinking a lot about practices and the ancient practices that we have given up, and I don't know why, but I was thinking of oiling and braiding hair. I was thinking of singing stories passed on by not necessarily blood ancestors, but chosen ancestors. And I was just like, yeah, I was just really moved by that question, because I think it is in and on us grappling with that question that we will actually be able to address the other questions that you have posed. But just want to express very deep gratitude and love for your presence here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And so we are right at time. Let's give it up again for Amana. Give it up for yourselves